Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into why your relationship with money has way more to do with your psychology than it does with your math skills.
You know, we're always taught that finance is all about spreadsheets, formulas, and hard data. But the truth, it's way more human than that. The most important money decisions we make aren't punched into a calculator. They're made around the dinner table, and they're driven by things like ego, pride, fear, and our own unique personal histories.
So let's kick things off by talking about what we can call your financial DNA. It's the key to understanding why your money habits, no matter how weird they might seem to other people, make perfect sense inside your own head.
Here's the thing. Your personal experiences with money pretty much become your financial reality. Think about it. If you were born in the 1970s, you saw the S&P 500 shoot up tenfold when you were young, so you're probably pretty optimistic about stocks. But if you were born in the 50s, you grew up with a flat market, which would naturally make you more cautious. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about seeing that financial advice that sounds brilliant to one person can feel totally crazy to another.
This idea is just captured perfectly by the author Morgan Housel, who said, "People do some crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. Every single financial decision we make feels justified to us, based on our own story and our own view of the world, even if it looks totally bizarre from the outside." All right, let's bust our first big myth, shall we? This is the idea that getting wealthy requires some secret formula or that you have to be some kind of super genius.
To really see what I mean, let's compare two absolute legends of investing. On one hand, you have Warren Buffett, who pulled off an incredible 22% average annual return. On the other, you have Jim Simons, a hedge fund manager who generated a mind-blowing 66% a year. So, just based on those numbers, the answer seems pretty obvious, doesn't it?
Warren Buffett's net worth is a cool $84.5 billion. But here's the kicker. Jim Simons, despite those way higher returns, has a net worth of $21 billion. That's 75% less. So, what gives? It's not just skill, it's time. Buffett started investing when he was just 10 years old. Simons didn't really hit his stride until he was 50. That massive head start gave the magic of compounding decades longer to work for Buffett. In fact, an incredible $81.5 billion of his fortune was earned after he was in his mid-60s. His secret weapon wasn't just being smart, it was having a ton of time.
And that brings us to our second myth, the idea that success is purely about the decisions you make. The truth is, you have to account for luck, risk, and all the wild cards that are completely out of our control. Just think about this for a second. Back in 1968, what do you think the odds were for a high school kid to get access to an advanced computer? Yeah, about 1 in a million.
Well, one of those 1 in a million students was Bill Gates. His school, Lakeside, just so happened to be the only high school in the entire world with one. And he said it himself, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. That is an unbelievable stroke of good luck.
But what about the other side of that coin? What are the odds of a high school student dying in a mountaineering accident? It turns out that's also about 1 in a million.
And that's exactly what happened to Kent Evans. He was Gates's brilliant friend, the third member of their computer group, who tragically died before he could even graduate. He experienced the flip side of that exact same 1 in a million probability, an equally rare stroke of bad luck, or risk. It's just a powerful reminder that luck and risk are two sides of the same coin.
This whole concept is so critical for understanding how success really works. It leads to something called tail events, and that's just a fancy way of saying that a very small number of events are responsible for the vast majority of the results. And you see these tail events everywhere. An art dealer's entire fortune might come from just 1% of their collection. A venture capital fund gets propped up by a few huge winners that make up for all the failures. Amazon's incredible success was driven by Prime and AWS, not the failed Fire Phone. The big takeaway here is that you don't have to be right all the time. You just have to survive long enough for those few big wins to come along and pay off. Which leads us to our third and final myth, the idea that the goal is just to be rich. Let's actually dig into the difference between being rich and being truly wealthy.
See, being rich is about your current income. It's what people can see, the fast cars, the big houses. But being wealthy is hidden. It's the money you haven't spent, the assets you have that are growing quietly. Being rich buys you things, but being wealthy, that buys you freedom and control over your own life.
This brings us to what's called the man in the car paradox. When you see someone driving a fancy sports car, you rarely think, wow, that driver is so cool.
Instead, what you think is, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. We use our own desire for nice things as a benchmark for how others might admire us. But in reality, they're just admiring the car and imagining themselves in it.
And this gets to the real payoff. The highest dividend money can ever give you isn't the stuff you can buy. It's the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want. The ultimate goal isn't showing off. It's having complete and total control over your own time.
But achieving that level of control, that true wealth, it isn't free. So, to wrap this all up, what is the real price of admission? What does it actually cost to succeed? Successful investing always comes with a price, but it's not dollars and cents. The real price you pay for great market returns is emotional. It's the volatility, the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, and the regret you feel along the way. The big mistake people make is trying to avoid paying this price by timing the market. The right way to think about it is to see all that turmoil as an admission fee you have to pay to get in the door, not as a fine you get for doing something wrong.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important takeaway of all. The hardest financial skill there is getting the goalpost to stop moving. That temptation to always want more, what some people call the hedonic treadmill, is incredibly powerful. So the real question you have to ask yourself is this: what's enough for you? Because the only person who can truly answer that question is you.